It's a tough job for everybody in education, and being a principal and a vice principal is a really tough job. Schools are the hubs of community, and I'm not sure that people realize the work that's on the shoulders of principals. And it's an amazing job. It really is. And it's a big, big job. And so sometimes I'm not sure if everybody really realizes that. It's a privilege to have the position.
Welcome back to Education Matters. I'm your host, Jason Buccheri, and today's episode is part 1 of 2 on the critical role of principals as essential nodes in our public education systems. We all know that great leadership is essential for any organization, but in education, the role of principals goes far beyond administration. Principals are the lead learners of their schools, setting the tone for learning, professional growth, and community engagement. In this episode, I'm joined by Dr. Shannon Behan, the president of the British Columbia Principals and Vice Principals Association, representing nearly 3,000 school leaders across the province. Dr. Behan has worked in public, private, and international education for over 25 years. She received her undergraduate degree and teaching certificate from the University of Victoria, her master's degree from the University of Calgary, and her doctorate in education leadership and policy studies from the University of Kansas. Shannon's diverse experience includes teaching in Taiwan, serving as a counselor, and holding leadership roles in elementary, middle, and high schools. Most recently, she served as a principal in the British Columbia Offshore School in Beijing, China, and as a district principal in the School District 47 Powell River. Shannon was also a key driver behind expanding programs and offerings for international students in Powell River, including opening a satellite campus in Vancouver's historic Gastown neighborhood. In our conversation, Shannon shares her journey and the challenges principals face in today's educational landscape. We explore how they balance the administrative side of their roles with the vital responsibility of being the intellectual and emotional anchors for their schools. Our discussion certainly covers how principals are not just leaders, they're also pivotal in shaping the learning culture and ensuring their communities thrive. And so I'm really looking forward to sharing this conversation about really how crucial principals are to the entire education system. And I'd like you to stay tuned as well for part 2 of this, what I'm calling a mini-series, where we'll dive deeper into this topic with an incredible principal who will share firsthand insights into what it means to truly lead a school and a community to create a place for learning and for caring for each other. So without further delay, let's get into today's conversation with Dr. Shannon Behan. Dr. Shannon Behan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here. I'm excited to chat today.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. Can you tell the audience, where does this podcast find you?
Currently, I am in my home community of Powell River, which is located on the west coast of British Columbia. And it's a small, isolated community only accessible by sea or air, and just outside of Vancouver.
And you were just showing me that wonderful backdrop that you have that doesn't work for lighting on the YouTube feed, but the audience just have to trust me when I say it's some of the most gorgeous background one can imagine.
Yes, it is. It's beautiful. There's something about, as soon as I see the ocean, then I know my heart is back at home.
You know, I can't say my heart's back at home, but there's something special about human beings in the ocean. It's I don't know. I'm gonna say it's some of our primordial DNA that just feels at home around the ocean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I agree with you. It's yeah.
I lost you halfway on that one, but that's fair. Shannon, we always start with learning about someone's background, but before we jump in, can you just describe for the audience your role currently?
Currently, I'm president of the British Columbia Principals and Vice Principals Association. And our association is, we represent just under 3,000 principals, vice principals, district vice principals in public schools throughout the province of British Columbia.
Excellent, excellent. So we will dive into that because I am fascinated by your role and your kind of place within the greater education system, as well as that of principals. So we're going to dive into that for sure. But can we start with where and when did you grow up?
I grew up here in Powell on the traditional lands of the Tla'amin Nation. And my parents came here from Ireland. And my mom came here when she was 18 or so and raised us in this beautiful community. I have 4 siblings, and we all went to Catholic school here in town, not the public school. So it was a Catholic elementary school. And then I was privileged to be selected. I went to the local high school, which is a public school. And then I was fortunate enough to be selected as an exchange student. So my grade 11 year, I spent it in Finland, where I went to school and did my high school there.
All of high school was there?
No, I did my 1 year there. Then I came back here, finished, and went off to university. But I would say it was a really interesting time for me to be away. So in a small community like this, but to go and have exposure to education in a really different context and at a different time. But anyway, so, getting back to the original question, this is the home community where I grew up. I don't get to be here very often because my current job is in Vancouver, and I'm traveling around the province to all the districts often. But because it's spring break, this is my last day here, and then I'll head back to Vancouver tomorrow morning. But yeah, this is my home community. This is where I grew up. I love it here. It's a beautiful place.
So can you give the audience a sense of how you and all your siblings played growing up? What was that like?
I love that you always ask that question because it's a really good one. When I watch what has happened for children, a lot of children understandably have very orchestrated play. Our play was go outside and play. And the rule was when the street lights come on, you have to come back home. So we had bikes and roller skates and trails and fishing rods. And we went outside to play all day. And we would come in for, lunch and whatnot. But we were kind of like roaming locusts. There were a lot of neighborhood friends that we would meet up with. We felt very comfortable on the trails. But there were groups of us. So we all stuck together. Mm-hmm. We took care of one another. But it really was go outside and play. And both my parents were working. My mom didn't start working until we were a bit older with 5 children, mm-hmm. She probably wanted to work really quickly, but that wasn't. So my mom worked at the public library in town. And so it was a lot of kind of outside playtime when we were younger. As I was growing up, there were more activities at school. I was really interested in sports, and I played a lot of sports. My main sport was basketball, and then I got into long distance running. And so I played a lot of basketball after school, with my basketball coach, basketball team. And then there was a basketball court in the neighborhood, so we would play basketball with the friends around. But it was a lot of kind of free roaming time to explore, and it seemed safe, and it was safe. And so sometimes I feel that, kids nowadays are missing out on some of that free experiential experiences where they can, we got stuck in places and sometimes we were lost in the woods, but we managed to find our way home. Mm-hmm. Always, which was a key to success.
Well, there's one thing for sure that everyone I've interviewed agrees with, and that's that sentiment you just expressed there, that we could give our kids a lot more freedom and should encourage it. And so I think there's something there that as leaders in education and within our own communities, we need to encourage more. Within all that play, what do you remember loving to learn?
In the play,
or in general.
Well, I love being outside. I love coming here to Powell River because I love the trails. And so I love being outside in the trails. I love being on the ocean and the lakes. I really enjoyed that. I loved being with my friends. In school, I loved math. That was one of my favorite subjects, was math. And it wasn't easy. I loved the problem solving approach to math. And so I just think there's a lot of things that I love to learn, and I continue loving to learn. Like, I feel excited about it. When I was in high school, when I went to Finland, even, I didn't speak a word of Finnish. Actually, I had a little Walkman, and I ordered a tape. And so I learned rudimentary Finnish before I went there. And I loved learning the language when I was there. Nobody spoke English. Even the teacher who taught English didn't really speak English that well. And so I had to learn how to speak Finnish pretty quickly. Made great friends. I joined every team possible that I could join. It was almost like all those childhood skills that I built up by roaming freely, I took with me, and I keep taking them with me in every experience that I get to enjoy. But yeah, no, I just think I love learning about so many things.
That's wonderful. Is there anything about your education in particular that you wish students today could experience? I mean, obviously, an exchange program in Finland sounds amazing.
Yeah, that was pretty spectacular, especially for somebody from a relatively small, isolated community. I was so lucky. I had to apply, and then I was selected to be the international student, which was great. So at the Catholic school, it was a very kind of rigorous and really highly structured education. We had in our community there was an order of nuns, the teaching nuns that came, and they kind of ran the school. So it was very structured.
Because I went to Catholic school, and although, here in Ontario, we have public Catholic, right? And although I wasn't educated by nuns, every now and then the nuns got involved, and man, they were tough.
They were tough as nails. They really were. And I mean, we still, at the dinner table with my siblings, we still talk about Sister Claire. Sister Claire was fabulous. I'm just shout out to Sister Claire. Don't smite me, God. And our Sister Petronella was our principal, but it was very rigorous. Every Friday we would have our assembly. All 300 of us would be standing, listening to the assembly. And that rigor and high expectations carried through to the classroom. For me, that worked really well. I love to learn. It was a really well-structured environment. And so it worked really well for me. We know in our current education system, that kind of highly structured learning system doesn't work well for everybody, because you kind of have to fit into a system like that, rather than having the system envelop a child, which is kind of how we like to approach our children now, which is correct. So getting back to that question, it was like that highly structured education system. I'm grateful for that. That was a really strong foundation, I think. And so that strong foundation allows for the opportunity to be curious and think critically and get creative. With that strong foundation, you can do that.
Yeah, I always wondered about that, that there were sometimes I felt like the education system, even as a younger student, like, in middle school, I felt like we were getting off kind of easy. I'm like, that's all they kind of wanted from us. Like, my mom's harder on me at home for my, reading and writing skills, and the school was being. So I do often wonder about that too. What's the place for rigor, and how do we have high expectations yet build those really fluid learning environments that we know students need today? Any thoughts on that?
It is a good question, because, of course, I bring my bias with me everywhere I go. And so I'm a firm believer in the rigor of education. And how do we balance that with the outside learning, with the opportunities we provide kids to have that relationship building with their classmates and their peers? So how do we balance those two things? It's a really good question. And I'll jump a little bit to explaining about what I think about this. So in my career, I've had the opportunity to work as a principal in a BC offshore school in mainland China. And they have a very rigorous education system that all the students go to, and when they come to high school, so I was principal of the high school, they have that really strong foundation. And then they come to a system that's like a BC system, which is where they start exploring all those other things about who they are. And, because we start where the child is at. So it's a totally different system. And I think it's a really rich system for the kids from mainland China because of the balance of the two systems. But it is a very good question. Like, I mean, you've been in a Catholic school. You did probably the drill and kill. We went through the timetables, 15 minutes every day. We went through the days of the week and it was rigorous every single day. And as we get older, then maybe in our system, maybe we can tighten up some of those things in our system so that we have that strong foundation skills. And that gives the opportunity for kids to jump to other things. But yeah, it's a great question.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that different cultures can learn from each other, particularly around the education system. I wish I could remember where I read this, or probably more likely it was a discussion with someone. But someone pointed out to me that because of the nature of the differences in our languages, right, between an alphabetic language and then obviously Mandarin, where you have to learn symbols, is that the drill and kill nature of the learning has to be that way to a certain degree to remember. Like for us, it's just the letters of the alphabet and limited number of sounds, whereas in other languages, in particular Mandarin, there are so many different symbols that need to be memorized at a young age. So that kind of preempts their brain and the pedagogy to be more like what we're kind of calling drill and kill, or very repetitive kind of learning. But then I think that does, once you build that foundation, which helps with memory, which helps with sequence and thinking in an ordered way, like all those kind of things do get developed, I think, more rigorously in that kind of system than they do in ours. But then you can kind of turn them loose, because then on the flip side, what I've heard from educators who have taught in China, and then from what senior level folks and businesses in China want, is more creative thinking. They're worried that their structure is too rote, and then they get to a point where they need the creative engineers, not just the folks that can build the thing or replicate the thing, but invent a new product or field. So anyway, any thoughts on that, the cultural piece, and how we can kind of share from each other's cultures?
Well, and that's why when I was working so much in international education, I loved the combination of a highly structured kind of foundation system with what we offer in BC. And the kids from Asia really appreciated what we offered, because it's almost like if you think of a tree, we have a really strong foundation, and then the BC system allows those branches and leaves to grow, which is the creativity piece. And I agree. I mean, if you look at what's happening in the world right now, and what we're looking towards, is we need our creative thinkers. We need people who don't just know how it's always been done. We need people who can create what it's going to look like, to make sure that we, the best interest of children and families and communities are being served.
To that end, in your varied experience, what do the best classrooms look like, sound like, feel like?
Again, with my bias, I really like highly structured classrooms, but there's, in my most recent school that I was at, I would go so I was in high school for about 20 years, and then I was in elementary. I was working internationally, and then COVID hit, and then I didn't want to be in mainland China during COVID. And so I took a job at an elementary school, and there was a grade 2 class that I absolutely loved. And the teacher had like rocking chairs and varying levels of tables and stand-up tables for kids. And she had a really robust plan and lessons, and the kids were so engaged. And they loved to challenge themselves. And they would always say, "Oh, Mrs. Behan, we're doing our timetables and we're ahead of what we should be doing." And like they were telling on the teacher, like they just loved it. Like she was inspiring the kids to be so happy and proud of what they were doing in their learning. And I love seeing classrooms like that. And it really comes out of that beautiful, magical connection that they have with teachers in the classroom. And that's where it all comes from. I mean, it's a tough job. It's a tough job in education for everybody right now, but that magic that's created in those classrooms, I love seeing that. I love seeing it.
Can you, now's probably a good point to dive into your work a little bit more as, at the BC Principals Association. Can you describe your work? And then I want to get into the importance of the role of principals, what the principal role should look like. But let's start with your job.
So my role as president of the association is to meet with as many principals and vice principals as I can, hear about what's going on, the current context of schools, and advocate with the Minister of Education and our other sector partners to support principals and vice principals in professional development, in member services support that they need, advocate for contract equity, pay equity, and wellness. And embedded through all of that is the work that we need to do in reconciliation, equity, diversity, and inclusion. So essentially, the way that I do that is I connect with as many leaders throughout the province as I can, in person and through all our other technology that we can do, and listen to what's going on for them. What are the current trends that we're seeing? What are the current challenges? What are the wonderful things that we're seeing? And do the work of advocating to continue to support leaders and leadership development throughout the province. Fantastic.
What do you wish more people understood about the role of principals across the country?
That is a good question. I think that, it's a tough job for everybody in education, and being a principal and a vice principal is a really tough job. Schools are the hubs of community. And what all parents want their children to be well-educated, exposed to opportunities, and what we say in BC is to cross the stage with dignity, purpose, and options so that they can have a future and a life of their own in this world that we are only guessing what it might look like in 20, 30, 40 years. And the principal is kind of the person that's the connector to all of those things. I'm not sure that people realize the work that's on the shoulders of principals. And in BC, our ministry has put fantastic initiatives in with our food programs, with our before and after school childcare, with all these great initiatives that are right for kids and families. The challenge is that it's on the shoulders of principals. So for example, if you're having a daycare at your school, we have recruitment and retention issues all over the country. The person who's supposed to do childcare in the morning can't come in because they're sick. It's the principal that steps in to do that. And it's through everything. Sometimes you don't have a grade 2 teacher. Sometimes you don't have your math 10 teacher. Sometimes you don't have your Chem 11 teacher. And that's who's stepping in to do it. You're being the educational leader. You're being the building leader. You want to make sure that your children or families are connected to the school, and then they're also connected to one another. So you're trying to create all of those opportunities, and it's an amazing job. It really is. And it's a big, big job. And so sometimes I'm not sure if everybody really realizes that. It's a privilege to have the position, and it's a huge, huge responsibility, and it's a big job. And we're putting more and more on principals, I think, all the time.
Yeah, it is certainly one of the more complex jobs, at least within the education system, maybe anywhere else. What are the qualities of great principals?
Oh, well, first of all, I think I'm just kind of thinking about as I go around the province who I've met that I think, wow, they do a really beautiful job. And the first part is that you have that contextual understanding piece. So it's very relational. It's a very relational job. You have to get to know people, get to understand people, be open, be communicative, listen a lot, listen. And, I just think about there's a principal who I met in Surrey, really talented. In his school, there are a lot of new Canadians that are coming there. There was a family that their child was not well, and the parent came to the school and asked him if he could go to the hospital and explain to the doctor, because they had some language skills, help explain to the doctor that, please, take care of my child, like that kind of piece. And principals do that work all the time. There was a principal in Campbell River at one of the schools, and I had gone there just a couple of weeks after there was a big fire at the school, and it had burned down about a half portion of the school. Well, his daughter alerted him. First of all, she found out about it on social media at like 2 a.m. or something. Dad, there's a fire at your school. So he got up, he went to the school, and it was a high school of maybe 1,000 students or whatever. Within him and his admin team and the senior team, within about 6 days, they turned it all around. They had satellite schools that they could organize to send all the kids to. And it seemed almost seamless that there was one portion of the school that they continued to use. And then it was seamless that the kids had PE at this other school. And they had, so those are the skills that I think really talented leaders, and there's so many more, pardon me, have all throughout, and not just this province. It's all over the country because it's a big, huge job, but people that are very relational, very thoughtful, visionary, because you need to know what your school plan is. You also need to really be clear on what your district strategic plan is and make sure all that is aligned. And you have to love it. You actually really have to love this work.
I kind of love hearing about your job. Like, it sounds like a dream job for me. Like to go to every school possible and network and learn about what are the challenges across the province. Can you describe, generally speaking, what you would say are the most common requests or issues that principals bring up for you?
And I agree with you. It is a dream job. It really is. So just so you know, I had to run to be elected. And because I'm from a very small community, I thought there are 14 other administrators here. So I thought there's a good chance I'll get 13 or 14 votes. But like I said, it is a dream job. When I go around the province, the big issues are recruitment and retention. Every day, principals go to the school, open up their buildings, and then you look and see who's not coming to school. How am I going to fill those positions in?
And is this all across the board, or are you speaking specifically with like finding the right amount of teachers and ECEs? Like, is it teachers, ECEs, daycare staff, teachers, or all of the above?
It's all throughout the system. And so usually what happens is you have to kind of almost rejig your schedule almost every day.
Every day.
Because our most vulnerable kids need the support. So if the support staff isn't able to come in today, then you have to rejig the schedule so that the kids who need the most support have the most support. And then again, it depends. And also I think in the greater metropolitan area, the recruitment and retention piece is an issue, but it's not as great as it is in our more outlying areas. Up in the north, quite often we're struggling with teachers who are non-certified. Maybe they have an undergrad degree. The ministry is responsive to that. They recognize the issue and they're doing some really smart work recruiting new educators to the north. But it's just in the meanwhile, filling those positions, that's an issue for principals and vice principals daily.
I'm at the point, Shannon, where I'm ready for some radical kind of ideas and interventions. Like as you're talking, it's like, can we make everyone's practicum? Like you want to go to teachers college, like a year of practicum up there, like just get people going up there. And obviously you need a longer term solution, but there's so many different things we can do in this day and age. Because it's, to the detriment of those communities that, I'm tired of hearing all these northern communities get such, poor infrastructure, poor support, because it's tough to get people there.
The ministry has taken on that exact initiative. And so, for example, I'll be in Haida Gwaii next week. And the practicum, I think there were 3 practicum students that went to Haida Gwaii, which again is quite a remote area. And then in the Bulkley Valley, they've had some practicums there. The goal is have the practicum there and encourage
To
people to
stay?
stay.
Yeah. Well, okay. Kudos to
Yeah.
the BC ministry.
Yeah. No, yeah. And they have a lot of other initiatives that they're putting in place to encourage. I think they're doing financial initiatives to maybe
Sure.
leave the Lower Mainland.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lower Mainland's great, but I'm not sure why people are so hesitant to go to the hinterland. It's
Yeah.
fun. There's great communities. There's good people, and you can shop online if you really want to shop online.
Well, that's a good pitch. So do you think, and maybe let me phrase this a different way. What kind of supports, generally speaking, do principals need around? Maybe it's around professional learning, or obviously you mentioned recruitment and getting the actual people on site. But in terms of developing the great principles that we need to have a great education system, what kind of support do you think they need?
I think that professional development for sure. Leadership doesn't just happen. And when you go into teaching and you get your undergrad degree or whatever it is, you're in the university for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, whatever it is. But then you become a person in the education system for 25 or 30 years. So it's really important that built into our system is the support and the education for people who are aspiring to be leaders and people who are working on the job as leaders. So at our association, we are acknowledging that right now that we have a lot of new leaders coming into the profession, and we offer a lot of professional development offerings. So for example, we have aspiring leaders program, and it's for currently serving teachers who are thinking about going into admin. And so it's a course that they take online on Saturdays. And then we have our foundations program, which we offer in the summer for new leaders who are in their first or second year of being a principal or vice principal. We all go down to UBC together, and we kind of give them kind of the first step into what their life is going to look like, how it changes. It changes so much. Here in BC, we're not in the teachers union, so it's very different working within a union, working within the context of a unionized environment, and you're not in the union. So we go over a lot of those things during that first week. And then there's ongoing professional development offerings through the association, because you just build your skills as you go through this career. And there has to be ongoing professional development. So we offer a lot of those. We're excited about an offering that we're bringing, and it's created in line with the Superintendents Association. So a year ago, we had a pilot program where we had about 30 or 40 new leaders go through kind of 10 different modules of the foundation pieces of what it means to be a leader. And so we spent a year doing that. And then right now we've refined the feedback. It's gone to UBC, and we're just waiting for the outcome of that kind of pilot program. And then hopefully we'll put something more concrete into play for developing leaders. But I think you're right. It's professional development has to be ongoing throughout our entire career. Our association offers a lot of it.
How many, like you talk about, they're filling in for grade 2 teachers, they're filling in for ECEs. Like, do they have enough time for professional learning in a year? Like, obviously a year is long. But how many opportunities do they really get in a year?
That's a good question.
I guess ballpark, just ballpark.
Yeah. I would guess that most principals, vice principals do, usually within a district, there's an offering. So the district would have an initiative that the leadership team would be able to take advantage of. And then there'd be some self-driven initiatives. I guess you'd have formalized maybe 1 or 2 opportunities a year.
Yeah.
But, I think I did my doctorate when I was principal of an elementary school, and it was kind of from 4 a.m. till 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. till 2 a.m, that kind of thing. And, my master's was similar. I was raising young children at the time, and it's not outside of the norm that
Right.
way of operating. And that's what I mean. It's a tough job, yeah. And trying to draw some boundaries to have your own time.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough that way. Yeah.
I mean, and that is kind of in line with what I understood of the role. Like, I mean, and I asked you that question to put it in context for the audience. Like, 2 days, for professional learning, and then okay, you can carve out. Let's say it's 5 days a year, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just talked about a strand of PD that I wasn't even on my list of questions to ask you about, like leadership stuff. Like so obvious, I missed asking you that question, right? Like, of course they need to do PD on how to lead a school. You mentioned the nexus of a community. Of course, I was thinking things like, technology integration and artificial intelligence. Like, so right there, you and I have just booked up the 5 days, and then we still haven't talked about all the other things that they need to support with. So I just wonder, how do we continue to find opportunities for them to do more professional learning?
Well, I was going to jump in there, like about AI. I really love delving into kind of playing with that. But I would say in terms of in the roles of principals, I think AI can make your job a little easier. There are, I think, a lot of opportunities coming up, but that's a good example is where can you access professional development for that specifically? I think around the province, we could really benefit from professional development around, ed tech, AI. I mean, but the struggle sometimes is we're working so hard to make sure we have technology in our schools, or food for kids, or the programming, or all the other things, and make sure you have enough staff every day. These initiatives, sometimes you need something like this that's kind of driven from outside, but the support is needed because this is the way that we're going. Think about how much has changed in the last 5 years.
Incredible.
And so it is needed. How on the plate of a currently serving principal or vice principal, how do you do that? It's a tough question. And maybe that's somebody who's so bright and connected like yourself can maybe help us out in that regard. Possibly.
I certainly trying and would love to. I mean, part of the podcast is to explore this and to bring some ideas to different folks like the ministries across the country. If we do focus though on the areas of change that a principal can have the most direct impact on, what would you say those are?
The areas of change. Well, I guess when I think about the role and the purpose of the role, life is, when I went to school, life was a certain way. Now the context is different. 20, 30 years from now, it will look different. But I really continue to go back to what is the purpose of school, to help create communities and make sure children have the opportunity to cross the stage with dignity, purpose, and options. And every parent has kind of the same hope and, requests and dreams for their child as one another. So the biggest kind of change agent is to make sure that the kids are happy at school, that they have the courses that they need, that we advocate to make sure we have, well-educated teachers and support staff in the system, so that, the world is changing, so that the kids are prepared for what the world looks like when they graduate. That's the biggest impact. It's all relational. It's a very relational job.
What changes would you make to the role overall, if any?
Wow, that's a big question. I would say I would take off some of the pieces that would take away from the ability to be an educational leader. So, for example, sometimes you spend a lot of time doing custodial work, or busing, or those things which are really important, but take away from the opportunity to spend more time in classes, more time connecting with teachers, more time connecting with families. Some of those jobs, if you could take them off your plate so that you could really continue to delve into the stuff that really matters, I think that's matters for children and families
Mm-hmm.
that you have expertise in, that's where I always wanted to spend more time in classes.
Excellent. If I could ask you to look forward and look into your crystal ball and describe what you see education looking like in 40, 50 years from now, what would it look like? And you can feel free to describe, like maybe a utopian vision, maybe a realistic vision, and maybe an ugly vision that we don't want it to get to. But feel free to take it in whatever direction you choose.
Yeah, I might ramble on a little bit, but I might go a few different places. First of all, I'm a really hopeful person. So I'm excited about what I think school might look like. It's impossible for me to guess what it might look like 50 years from now, but I've been reflecting a lot about my own experience. Like in preparing for this today, I was thinking a lot about my own experiences, and I've been so fortunate to have so many neat opportunities in my own career. And why have I been able to jump at those? So I'll tell you a little story. When I was going to Finland to take part in my exchange, I went down to Vancouver. My parents dropped me off in Vancouver, and I was to make my way to Seattle and then head to Finland for the year. So by the time I got to Seattle, I'd lost my passport. As I was 15,
sure,
is right. Maybe I had some bubble gum that was more exciting.
I laugh because I did something very similar on when I was 16-year-old on a rugby trip. We'll share that story later.
There you go.
That's why I laugh.
And so, of course, I was in Seattle. I didn't know anybody there. I'm thinking, what am I going to do? Had a few tears, I'm not going to lie. And then I thought, well, okay, I better try to figure this out. So I literally was able to talk my way onto the plane, explain what was happening. And when it was different times, we wouldn't be able to do that now.
I got on with a Canada's Wonderland pass.
There you go.
Yeah, different times,
right? But so there I was able to get to Helsinki, and then made my way, figured out all the passport pieces. So it worked out. And then, when I look and think about, somebody had asked me when I went to China to be the principal there, what did you do to prepare to be the principal? And, I thought, well, kind of everything and nothing. All of my experiences have given me a backpack of resources, skills, critical thinking, creativity, curiosity. All of those experiences have allowed me to land here and be the principal of a school with 5,000 children that I don't even really share the same language with, because the kids in the school in China were from Korea, Russia, and China primarily. And then there was one Caucasian boy who was my son who came with me. So that's where I just think I couldn't have guessed when I was taking my fishing rod and going to Little Slam Lake to go fishing with all my neighborhood friends, that maybe the skills that I had developed at that time were going to be important as I'm navigating how to get on an international flight without a passport, or how to lead a school of 5,000 people in mainland China. So I'm not sure what the world is going to look like in 50 years, but the critical thinking, the curiosity, the connections that we're providing for kids is what I place my hope in. And that's why I have a really hopeful future, because that's what's going to make it for kids and for families. So there's a bright future ahead. I'm a believer in that.
So then, if I can ask the question in this way, if you could create that future, like wave a magic wand and define what the great education system should look like, and what great principles look like, and what great principles create, create schools like, how would you envision that?
First of all, I love that the initiatives that we're taking right now to alleviate the issues around poverty for kids. If I can make a magic wand, our food programs would be universal throughout all schools. It would be seamless. We're getting there, but that's the first piece. I love a highly rigorous education system where we have high expectations for students and families, where schools have really engaged parent communities where everybody knows they're welcomed in the school, that they belong in the school, that the schools are a reflection of the community that they belong to. And then where we, can meet where the kids are at, where the schools are a reflection of the values of the communities, and the opportunities that are available are a reflection of those pieces. I don't know that, it's the magic wand question, a highly rigorous education system that allows for creativity and curiosity. That's what I love to see. I love it.
You said you're a positive person, so I want you to lean into the other side of that. What worries you? What keeps you up at night?
When I was principal of a school, what would keep me up at night is when I knew the families or the kids were struggling and suffering and in a bad place and bad things. That kept me up at night. And now what keeps me up at night is as I go throughout the province, and one of the issues that I'm hearing percolating is that a lot of the leaders themselves are struggling with mental health issues. That keeps me up at night. I worry when a system or a district is maybe not as aligned as it can be. And that's where I'm up at night thinking about, okay, what can we do differently? How could we support the leadership development or the mental health and wellness piece or whatever it is? That keeps me up at night. When I see, I have a big family and, an Irish Catholic family. My dad has 12 siblings. They've all had 5, 6, 7, 8 children. So when I see all the little kids getting together, I am filled with hope that it's going to be a bright future. What would keep me up at night is that if they were in schools where they weren't engaged, where they weren't able to access supports and resources and opportunities, that's just a worry that I have.
Before we get to our last question, I wanted to give you an opportunity to, if you could give a message to all of Canada's principals. I know you work with a lot of the principals in BC, and I'm sure a lot of them know you by name. But if you could kind of hone a message to principals across the country, what would it be?
Wow, that's such a great question. I think what I would, especially coming off spring break, is remember that you are so appreciated with the work that you do. It's tough. There's some people that really know what is going on for principals and vice principals. A lot of the work is unacknowledged. And it's tough because you don't see the fruits of your labor till kids are 20 or 30 years away. But it is so valuable, it's so worth it, and it's so important. So, keep the faith, keep working, fight the good fight. It really, really matters. Reach out for help, network, connect, email me. I'll connect you.
I love that.
I'll connect you with resources and ideas.
Spoken like a great principal. Connect with me. I'll help you. I'll figure out a way to help you out. I really do love that. Okay, always, Shannon, our last question for the audience is, do you have a book, a music album, a podcast, an article that you would recommend?
Okay, so I have to say, I listened to, I think, all the guests that you've had on your podcast. I really love it. I'm really enjoying it. You have a diversity of speakers. At first, the first few that came on, I thought, there's nothing wrong with men. Men are great. But I thought, we have a selection of men. Okay. And then I thought, let's see. And then you've expanded and you have a diverse array. And I love it. I absolutely love it. And your dad's podcast was so beautiful.
Thank you.
Right now, I'm really drawn to American. It's terrible because I'm a voracious reader. I'm really drawn to a lot of American podcasts with what's happening globally in politics. And so I've taken a bit of a sojourn there. I always
sojourn is okay as long as you come back. Yeah, it's okay to venture now.
But it's almost like I'm just so drawn to it because, and for me right now, I think we will come out of this because of the critical thing. Like I bring it right back to schools. What do we need? We need critical thinkers. We need kids who can read. We need, so it's important to know what's going on globally, but it really matters what's happening in schools. So that's how we will create a brighter future. I love the podcast with Dr. Jody Carrington. I thought that was brilliant. I love what she says. But, I would say we're more connected than she says. So, but I'm not going to disagree with her here. No, right now, that's where a lot of my podcast listening. I love Jen Schwanke. She's a great podcaster. There's so many great ones out there. Mark Maron, if you want your junk food podcasting, I love his.
Mark Maron's fun.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
And what's the Dax Shepard? I
haven't listened to that, but it's a very popular, I think it's one of the most listened to podcasts out there. So.
Oh yeah, that's what I used to listen to a lot of pop music, but when I run, I listen to a lot of podcasts now.
Do you?
Yeah.
I can't. I'd love to, but I need music when I run.
Okay.
Yeah,
I used to all the time, but no, it's the podcast that I love.
We'll have to get a poll because I know a lot of the guests have been runners too. So we'll get a poll from a number of them and see whether they listen to podcasts or music
or
when they
running.
Run.
Yeah. Absolutely.
With that, Shannon, thank you so much for your time. This was wonderful.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity.
This podcast is recorded on the territory and Treaty 13 lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and on the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat and the Haudenosaunee. The show is edited and produced by the marvelous and talented Andrew Mastroianni. If you like what you're hearing, make sure you subscribe to us on Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast. Until next time, remember, there's absolutely no inevitability as long as there's a willingness to contemplate what's happening. I'm your host, Jason Buccheri. Until next time.